So a few weeks ago, I really torpedoed Northwestern. And at the time, it was deserved because they were acting like clowns. If you're going to move a conference game into enemy territory, if you're going to say, we are going to move a conference game against Wisconsin to Green Bay, I'm going to constantly think that you're pretty unserious about the sport of college football. If you're going to move a game willingly into enemy territory, I don't know how you can think anything otherwise. Now, Northwestern was in a tough spot. They are tearing down their field and building up a $800 million, going to be state-of-the-art, beautiful stadium at the side of their current field. So they have some issues. Now, they're also in a somewhat advantageous spot that they're in Chicago, where there are plenty of options that they could/should want to play some games at. But it doesn't necessarily work out that way. It hasn't worked out that way, where they wanted to play, some game. The majority of their games is Soldier Field, and they aren't going to really be able to 100% make that work. And they want to play a game every year at Wrigley Field. And they tried to say, hey, let's play games at Guaranteed Rate Field, the home of the White Sox, or the MLS Stadium, where it just has not been able to work out. So Northwestern, to their credit, has essentially said, screw it. We'll put up 15,000 bleacher seats around our football practice field, which if you are uninitiated with Northwestern's practice facility, etc., you really should scope it out because it is gorgeous. Their practice facility, their indoor facility, their practice fields are right on Lake Michigan. Like, they are as almost as scenic of a backdrop as you'll have the Chicago skyline in the background. You'll have Lake Michigan directly in the background. And frankly, it's going to be really interesting to see how that all works and shakes out, because I know that 15,000 seats at Northwestern, the immediate reaction is like, oh, okay. Like, are they going to be able to sell that out? But it's going to create a pretty hot ticket because there's going to be limited availability. There's only 15,000 seats. So what could have been a $20 or $30 ticket, I've been to a game at Northwestern, and I think we paid $37 a seat for our tickets at Northwestern. I don't think you're going to see that in a stadium that's going to hold 15,000 temporary bleachers. I don't think you're going to have any issues selling out the stadium, but then also creating a pretty big demand for those seats. Now, the downside might be whether or not those seats get pilfered by the visiting fans or not. But kudos to Northwestern, rather than being these transient teams for the course of, 2 full years where, okay, we're going to play this game at SeatGeek Stadium, the MLS, and then we're going to play these 2 games at Wrigley Field, these 3 games at Soldier Field, this 1 game, instead of having a hodgepodge of schedule around to really cement the fact that, like, hey, we don't have a home right now. And I see the word like homeless thrown around a lot in college football, where like South Florida is homeless. Well, no, they're not. They play all of their games at the Buccaneer Stadium. Temple is not homeless. They play all of their home games at the Eagles Stadium. The idea that they don't have a home isn't true. Now, Northwestern was facing a spot where they are truly, truly homeless, where they're going to spend a night at one buddy's here, a couple of nights at this buddy's couch. Like, that was what Northwestern was faced with. But kudos to them for just saying, you know what, to hell with it, because you're not going to be able to really put together here's what our home football schedule looks like. And regardless of whether people are used to living in the big city like Chicago, and Northwestern grads really go all over the place. And it was part of the argument that I made when I really kind of ran them down, was because, like, if you're going to move, if you can move any game on your schedule to Lambeau Field, any game, deciding, obviously, if it makes sense, like, you don't necessarily want to play a game 1 in Lambeau Field like the week of Thanksgiving, But then also, like, it's got to work with the Packers schedule, whatever the case may be. If you're Northwestern, you can play games in St. Louis, inside the dome. You can play a game in Washington, D.C. You can move your games pretty much wherever you want them to, and they're going to have some alumni that are interested, and you're going to make that a destination trip for fans, just like playing at Lambeau Field. It's going to be hey, our fans are going to make that short trip up to Green Bay and make it an experience for our fans and our players. And it's the same thing with playing at Wrigley Field, or if they were going to play a game at Guaranteed Rate Field, the White Sox Stadium. You're going to make it a fun experience for your fans and your players. But eventually, making it a fun experience for your fans or players becomes a hassle. Your players are going to not really enjoy the idea of okay, wait, which locker room are we in this Saturday? Where do we go? Who are we? How do I get there? And your fans are going to have to look at the schedule and look at the calendar rather than saying, okay, we are going to play Illinois this week. We are going to play Illinois this week. Where is this the game that's at Wrigley Field? No. This is the one that's at the soccer stadium. No, this is the one that's at Soldier Field. It's a hassle. And so instead of making it a gigantic hassle for their fans, their alumni, their boosters, their players, the school itself, the athletic department, the TV and radio partner, they just said, screw it. We're going to put 15,000 seats wherever we can cram them around our practice field. That's incredibly scenic. And it's going to be a cool, fun, I think, intimate environment. Is it going to be ideal? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I can't imagine what the two football games I have seen. I saw one game at Northwestern and one game at Illinois. In both, the wind was so strong that you couldn't throw the ball. You couldn't throw the football. I went to the 2022 Ohio State Northwestern game. And now I'm going to look up. Ohio State had a first-round quarterback and probably 3 first-round wide receivers in that game. I think C.J. Stroud threw the ball something like 13 times. And that's more. It was more. He completed. He was 10 of 26 for 76 yards. That's how ridiculous the weather was in a 21-7 win for Ohio State. Now that year, Ohio State, things went pretty well for Ohio State. They went 11 and no. Things didn't go well for Northwestern, and that was the last full season there for Pat Fitzgerald. But C.J. Stroud's a first-round quarterback and goes 10 for 26 for 76 yards. Playing directly on Lake Michigan. Not an exaggeration. This is on Lake Michigan. If you could, not the term stone's throw away is not even a fully accurate. It is not even a football throw away. It's not a punt away from Lake Michigan. If something happens and one of those stands upends itself, it's going into Lake Michigan. It is on Lake Michigan. So I imagine that that's going to be somewhat of a home field advantage. If you know, hey, guys, we're going to really have to kind of ground and pound here, because they get the opportunity to practice in that situation, in that condition all the time. They know what the Lake Michigan weather is going to be like, what the wind is going to be like, and it's going to create a home field advantage for them. Now, whether they can capitalize on that or not is the topic for a different discussion, but just give them a lot of credit, because when it was hey, we're going to play bounce around Chicago and then play a game at Lambeau Field, or play a game, I'd said play a game play Wisconsin in Indianapolis. If you don't have anywhere to go, play them anywhere other than Lambeau Field. Play anybody on your schedule other than Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. You got plenty of options. Now, renting out stadiums or whatever is probably, not ideal, but you can play Eastern Illinois at your 15,000 seat practice field. You can play Miami at your your practice field. I would say games against Duke and Indiana, and obviously it's not ideal. You don't want to play Illinois, a big-time rival for you, in a 15,000 seat stadium. You don't want to play Wisconsin in a 15,000 seat stadium. But rather than it being April and you're still going like, I don't know where the hell some of these games are going to go, to just grab the bull by the horns and say, this is what we're going to do. It might not be ideal, but damn it, that's what we're going to do. I give Northwestern a lot of credit. Making the best out of a bad situation. Now, should they have maybe thought about that before they started tearing down their old stadium? Yes. But that's neither here nor there. They're figuring it out, and I think they deserve a little bit of credit for that. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that's coming out of here on Saturday Glory. I'll see you on Sunday for the next episode of the Daily Huddle here on Saturday Glory.